Hello everyone, this is Thomas, and today we're talking tactics for my favorite wargame Triumph. Today's topic is Crassus's Folly, what not to do when faced with an overwhelming cavalry force. Marcus Crassus was a Roman general and statesman in the twilight of the Roman Republic. He was a member of the First Triumvirate alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey. And in 53 BC, he launched a military campaign against the Parthian Empire, a campaign which he would never return from. At the Battle of Carrhae, Crassus ordered his men to form up in a hollow square. This was an unorthodox tactic at the time, and it didn't pay off. Crassus's forces arranged themselves in a square so that they could fight on all sides and had no threat of being flanked. His cavalry were kept in reserve inside the square. The Parthians quickly surrounded Crassus's square and rained arrows down upon it. Eventually, Crassus dispatched his cavalry outside the square in an attempt to see off the Parthians. Roman cavalry moved out of the square and was led deeper into the desert where it was surrounded and destroyed. At this point, the Romans had no hope and were bombarded for the rest of the day with countless arrows, eventually being forced to flee the field in the dead of night. So why am I spending the time to talk to you about a tactic that failed in history and that I strongly believe won't work for you on the tabletop? Well, it's because first, I've seen a lot of new players try and implement this tactic. I think on paper, it makes a lot of sense. When you see a force that has overwhelming mobility and your cavalry is so greatly outweighed, there is an instinct to form the most defensive position you can think of and prevent yourself from being flanked. However, I urge you to resist this instinct. Now, why doesn't this tactic work? Well, first, just like with Crassus, if you adopt this formation, you completely cede the initiative to the other side. This is a very defensive position, one that greatly limits what you're going to be doing, and it signals to the enemy that they have free maneuver of the field to get into any position they want. Second, this position strongly impairs your ability to throw a counterpunch. The enemy army doesn't have to worry about you sallying out because if you do, like Crassus, what you can send forth is a limited, unsupported attack. Finally, the square creates an obvious weak point. In Triumph, the corners are especially vulnerable to being overlapped and pushed into each other, causing panic and immediate routes. Now, let's see how this plays out on the tabletop. So here we have the Romans who formed up in a formation similar to that Crassus would have used at the Battle of Carrhae. And as you can see, we're already at the point in the battle where the Parthians have gotten into any position they want. And if you are fortunate enough to be the Parthians in this scenario, this is how I would suggest to attack, focusing on two sides of the square rather than a total envelopment. This is going to help you take advantage of the fact that maneuverability is very poor in this formation, so the side of the square that you're not attacking is likely to never even get involved. These corners present a massive weak point in the square. The Parthians are going to be able to extend their lines past the corners of the square, giving them an overlap bonus. And if these corners are driven back in together, like so, now if this front rank falls back, it will be destroyed, creating a gap in the square. So here we have the Parthians have gone in. They've positioned their general to attack the weakest point of the formation right here. In this case, I have the Parthian general as an elite cavalry, so instead of a +3, he's a +4. The elite foot of the Romans is only a +3, but he's also overlapped because there's nothing protecting his flank, so he's all the way down to a 2. A 2 to 4, he's very likely to be backed up here. And then in this case, it's another elite foot against a elite cavalry, and should the Romans suffer any losses, this guy's going to be backed up and be destroyed. And from there, you can tell how the disaster is going to cascade here. Now, what do the Romans do to react to this? Their options are very limited. What can the Roman do? The elite foot, they only move 3. He can hardly even get this one unit into combat and start to wheel this flank over. He can't take advantage of the fact that he has more elements over here. In fact, he's going to get wrapped up before that even happens, and his cavalry is stuck in the middle. Thanks for tuning in. Next time, we're going to discuss a proactive tactic to take down a large mounted contingent like these Parthians. If you have any Triumph tips, tactics, or questions, please feel free to share them in the comments. Until next time, good luck, generals.